Cool, 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 cool. Wish I had a knife. We are going the opposite way of where our bike was. If you're new to the channel, we had our 2019 Harley-Davidson FXLR lowrider in performance mode, where it was a performance Harley build. The fact that we had a +4 front end because we had 17-inch wheels, which was similar to a +2 overall lip. We had a custom rear monoshock from Russ Werner Martin Designs that we ordered through Hardcore Cycles at 14.5 inches. In order to run that shock, we had to shave our frame, as well as some of the swing arm stops to allow for the swing arm to drop as much as it did. That gave us a crazy amount of ground clearance that we were able to take our Harley onto the track. We got a free keychain from TC Bros. And so now we're going the opposite direction, and we're making it a little bit of a chopper build. We have plans for Born Free Texas to kind of have our ideas finished up by then. We're not sure exactly where this is going to go and take us, but this is the first video probably of a couple, in which today's video we're going to be adding +6 fork tubes. Now, we were going to go for a +8, but we did order some, but they weren't actually in stock, that we had to cancel that order because there was no actual telling of when it was going to be fulfilled. So here it comes with a installation instruction. It shows the damper tubes, shows your lower bushing, your upper bushing. It looks like a spacer, and then your fork slider. And after that's going to be a retaining clip, and then on top of that is your dust spring. So here it says install new sealing rings on your damper rods. We just got some brand new ones because we sold our old ones when we got the new tubes. And so it shows you just the general outline. This is actually pretty good because I had another set that didn't include instructions, so this is very nice. We ordered this from TC Bros. It gives you with some new spacers. This is just PVC piping, and then here are the tubes themselves. This is going to be show chrome. They also have ultra chrome. It's just your standard 49mm fork tube. It has your bottoming cones on that. If you are going to be running cartridges, you are going to shave that off. This tube at 6, so this is going to be a 6 over for M8 Softails. The OEM fork tube is 23.5, so this is +4 for standard dynos, but for our bike it's going to be a +6. That this is a 29.5 inch fork tube, which it's the length of the top and the lower. That is wild. We're trying to go a little bit more of a chopper size. We just said, F it, we're going to go and try it. It was $250 for these fork tubes. So we said, it's worth the investment. If it doesn't work out, we'll try and sell it, recover some of the cost. But at $250, it's a doable thing. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. I'd appreciate it, hit that subscribe button, as well as checking out the affiliate links in the drop-down section below. By clicking on those links, you help support the channel, which helps us buy items like this, just to explore and see exactly what we can do with our Harley. Some things to take into consideration when you're going to be adding longer fork tubes is to make sure you have the proper brake line. It's attached to the fork slider or fork lower down at the caliper, and it's going to change the distance between it. We've already changed the brake line in anticipation because of this, but we haven't added brake fluid. We haven't secured the banjos. We just kind of did a rough mock-up so that way we can see how everything looks. And once we have it filled and secured, buttoned up, and we know for sure that's the length that we want it at, we'll go ahead and add brake fluid into the master reservoir, do the brake line bleed, add fluid, get all the air out, and then have it proper and ready to rock. Because right now we don't have a front brake because we went from our front end, we got rid of the entire front end. We had the master cylinder from Brembo, the RCS 19, which was amazing. We had dual calipers up front, and we decided to go back with the single axial caliper, but we are running a Twisted Tea Industries OEM caliper bracket for 13-inch rotors. Definitely check them out. Use code ConnorFXTV to save yourself 10% site-wide from brake bone shift linkages. You have your OEM caliper brackets as well as your radial caliper bracket mounts. They have a ton of stuff out there, and the ConnorFXTV promo code will save you 10% site-wide. So definitely check them out, as well as they are based here in Round Rock, Texas. So support Texas, support USA made, TTI, baby. So now what we're going to have to do is going to remove the front wheel. We're going to have to take out the fork tubes, break them apart, get all the fluid out, change out the springs, and then transfer the new fork tubes onto these fork lowers. One of the other things that we will be doing that's not necessary, but since we have these springs, when we did the 2+ over before we went to the performance fork tubes of the +4, we have a set of heavy duty progressive springs for Dyna tubes. This is going to be 25.5 inches. So we're gonna drop them into the new tubes. That way we have less of a distance to cover with the spacer, so it's not just a giant preload spacer. With the PVC pipe, we're gonna have the extra 2 inches of the spring, and then we're gonna put our preload spacer in there and dictate just how much of the spacer we need. There's a couple of videos where they basically just match it up to the top of the tube with the spacer. When we ran our 25.5 inch tubes, that's just gonna be the +2 for the M8 Softails. This is a lot of information, I understand that. Be sure and pause and try to get it back. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Instagram at ConnorFXTV or drop a comment down below and I'll be happy to get you squared away. When we ran the other tubes, we had 2 inches of preload at the top of the tube. So basically, you'll drop in your springs all the way, you'll put in your preload spacers, and then you'll measure from the top of the fork tube to about 2 inches. And that's a good base general preload spacer in there. You don't have to have that much preload. Some people just do it flush. It all depends on how you feel. That's how it came, and that's usually how I try to mimic it. With the fork fluid, we're gonna go off the Speed King cycle video that whenever they went +2, they added, I think it was 2 liters of fluid, because I think they had 23 or 25 and they added 2 on top of that. So we're gonna go with the 6 milliliters extra. It was about 22 or 23 of what we have in there currently. If you have a new M8 Softail, I believe it's 200 milliliters from the top of your tube. So measure that. Motion Pro does sell them. We've listed it down in the drop down section below where you can find them on Amazon, and that's a good gauge. And on this part, you can do it one of 2 ways. I always like to loosen the fork cap or the fork nut while it's on the bike, just because it's got some leverage on it. And then from there, I'll remove the fork tube. It is nice to have a friend for this, that way you can focus on loosening the bolts, but you can loosen it, one of them, just yourself. And if you need to, one of the ways I'll do it is I'll put my foot at the bottom of the tube and then I'll loosen whichever one's giving me trouble. So that way, even if it does come loose, your foot's still there holding it. Then it comes out. And then I'll go ahead and finish removing the fork cap while it's off of the bike. And depending on how much preload, or if you've never taken it off, just be mindful because it is under tension. And on my dyno, when I first did it, I would put a towel over it. So basically, you can grab like a little rag, put your nut, your socket on top of it, and continue to loosen it up. Just that way, if it does pop off, you have the rag to protect you. The other option is I would just kind of continue to press down on it, and I kind of cover it up with my hand. So that way, if it does pop out, it hits my hand first. You do want to be wearing safety glasses during this, just that way you're prepared and a little extra cautious. And you're going to see the O-ring, and that's where you know you're getting close. Once the O-ring has been exposed, it's like a couple more threads after that. We still have a little way to go. But even then, I just like to put downward pressure onto the socket. So that way, whenever it does kind of pop, it doesn't fly out. So where there's the O-ring, we're getting close. Now you don't want to pull down on the fork tube too much, because once this releases, there it is. You may actually slide the whole fork tube down. So once you have that off, be careful as to not spill any fluid. So we're going to take out your preload spacer. And we just reassembled this together about a week ago. So what we're going to do is just pour all that fluid into this cut. Still very blue. So be mindful of removing your spring. Take that out. This is the OEM FXLR spring. So we're putting it in a pan that we have down here. And we're going to continue to drain out the fluid. Now, if it's been a couple thousand miles, let's say tens of thousands, or a year or two, and you've never changed out your fork fluid, this would be the time just to get brand new fluid. Now, before you're able to break apart your fork tube, what you're going to need to do is remove the damper tube bolt, which is at the bottom of this. So you're going to take out that pinch bolt, and then the damper tube bolt is going to be right there. It's going to be a 12 millimeter for M8 Softails. And one easy way to do that, that's going to make it a little bit easier, is to put your fork spring back in there You could put the preload spacer if you choose to, but we just do the spring. We put the fork cap back on. Just basically give it a couple threads. And then what we'll do is turn this over and hit it with an impact in reverse so that we can back it out. Just push down a little bit on it. And that's it. And what I'll do, so I'll remove the socket from the impact and then just kind of kick it up against one of the corners, and it helps kind of back it out. There it is. And there is your damper tube bolt with the washer that's on the back, the crush washer. If you've never taken this out, if this is the first time doing it, replace your washer. It's not the end of the world because we've done it a couple times where we just use that same washer. We're using the same washer this time because we just put it in there. Perfect world, you're going to want to replace it even if you just did it. And the indicative sign that you should probably put in a new washer is you'll start seeing some leaking. You'll start to see some leaking after you put the bike back up together. You're going to have a little bit of a drip down near your axle. You may see it on the floor of your garage or wherever you keep your bike. And if that's the case, you can just take out your tubes, flip them over like we just did, take out the damper tube bolt, and then replace it with the washer as well. They're like 10 bucks at Harley. So now that we took out the damper tube, we're gonna go ahead and just flip it back over. There's probably be a little bit of oil that comes back out. So now that we've done that, take out your fork cap. And you're gonna wanna get a screwdriver to access the dust seal. If you have a dust cover, you can just invert the forks again and hit it with a small hammer. I like to do a little piece of tape on a screwdriver. We aren't running the dust cap, which is basically the hard one that comes over that, because we knew we were going to have to take them apart again pretty quick. See, now it's starting to leak all over the place. And you're going to want to just lift up, keep on going around, pushing up on it. It shouldn't take too much force. If you want to reuse this, be sure and be mindful of that because you may just end up messing it up. And that's going to be one of the things that keeps dust from getting inside your fork seals. So we're going to put that up there. There is a clip. It's here. It's going to be hard to see. But once we pull it out, you can just do a screwdriver, get in there, and just work it around. There it is. It's a little clip. And then, so at this point, you're going to find the maximum height before it locks out. And then you're just going to lower it a little bit and just pull up on it. And then that's it. At the bottom of your fork tube, there's going to be an oil lock piece. You're going to want to make sure it kind of stays in there. But so y'all can see what it is, and just knock everything around, is that this is just going to sit right there. So that's how it sits inside your fork slider. So that's going to go inside it, but we're just going to move this out to the side for now. And here's your damper tube bolt. You're going to remove that. So it just slides out. And then the other piece of the damper tube bolt is going to be this spring. And then your fork tube is consistent of your fork seal, as we fling oil that way. Fork seal, you have your spacer, which goes underneath the fork seal. And then you have your upper bushing. And then you have your lower bushing, which sits in that groove. Ooh, we almost lost that one. And you could probably pinch this out and it comes off. There it is. And so here is the fork tube as it sits, just the fork tube itself. Here is where the lower bushing sits, tons of oil. Be sure to have towels readily available, or shop towels, shop rags. That way you can make sure not to make a mess like we just did. And so the oil that we have here is sitting at about 20 fluid ounces. And so that's about 200 millimeters from the top. This is how you measure it with this tool right here. Basically, you just drop it in there on top. And then if you're over, just pull it out, and it's going to take you to the measure, to the setting that you put on here. There's numbers on here from, it looks like 10 millimeters all the way up to 300, all the way up to 300. That part is definitely nice if you have a friend, because it's hard to set it down and pull the plunger on the syringe portion. But again, you can just get a general estimate, and once you do one side, if you need to use that tool, you can just put it you can measure exactly how much it was with the measuring cut, and then you'll know for the next one you can pour it directly to that number. So we're gonna go to clean this up, get situated, clean up this mess. So here we have OEM right here, 23.5. We're gonna try to match it on the bottom. Hopefully don't drop it. Here's 29.5. That's gonna be the difference right there. That's +6 for M8 Softails. If you're running a Dyna, it's gonna be +4. You're gonna rebuild your fork tube. So you have your bottom bushing. That just goes on the bottom. And one good thing to do is just add a light coat of oil. And you can just do that with whatever fork oil you're gonna be using. And that way it's just kind of a little bit of a lubricant for all the parts. So we have that. You're gonna be doing your upper bushing because we have the lower one on there already. It just fits right over. Drop your upper bushing on top. Then it is the spacer. It does have a flat bottom as well as a coned little bit of a top. It's gonna be very difficult to see, but we are having the flat bottom facing down. So we'll slide that over. And then after that is going to be your fork seal. It's gonna be the flat one. Drop that down. And then that is your fork assembly. Now, when you go with your fork slider, we're just spilling oil still everywhere. Remember to, now what's gonna go inside your tube is gonna be your damper tube bolt. You have your damper rod or damper tube, then you have the spring, and then you're gonna slide that in there and just slowly make it vertical. Have it find the hole, there it is. It has the spring in there. And so now you're gonna be joining the two together. For your fork slider or fork bottom, what you're gonna want to do is make sure you have your oil lock piece, which is gonna be your bottoming cone is what I call it. And make sure it just finds its way at the bottom. Make sure it's flat, there it is. And the bottom of this fork tube has a little bit of an indent, and so now you're just gonna be feeding your fork tube in there. It's seated. And then you're gonna want to have a fork seal driver. This one's from Tracker Die. You can make one out of PVC, but this one's convenient because it has a little bit of weight that you fit it over your fork tube. It hasn't been feeded over, so you're just gonna feed that over your fork tube, and you're just gonna drop it. And you'll know when it's seated. It basically just doesn't go any further. It doesn't need to be crazy amount of force. After that, next important piece is going to be your retaining clip. Feed that over the tube, and then just kind of push it down till it's even, and it's gonna have a place to sit because on the inside of the fork slider, there is a little bit of a recess of where it sits. So you're just gonna feed one side and then pinch the other side, and it sits right in there. And you'll hear it click, there it is, there's that click. And then that's secured. After that, you're gonna get your dust seal or dust cover, which is the one that has that conical edge to it, where that's gonna be facing towards the top. Feed that over your tube again, and that's basically it. You can push that down. I like to use the kind of fatter end of this fork seal driver, and I'll just kind of give it a couple nudges, and that's it. Nothing crazy. You have your fork assembly back together. And so now what we're gonna be doing is adding our fork spring. And again, as we stated earlier, we are using the one from the Dyna kit. This is a heavy duty progressive spring. It just adds a little bit more spring to our OEM one. That way we don't have such a giant spacer. So I would suggest doing that. It's $100 for the set. You have two springs. It's probably a little bit more now. So we're gonna drop that in there. It's actually not that far off. There it is. We have to extend the forks. So it's sitting about right here versus this is giant. So you're gonna drop that in there. Hit the socket. And then you're gonna get impact, and you're gonna go forward this time. And again, nothing crazy. I like to just do two ooga doogas. So now you add your spacer. Which this is what we're talking about. So we have these old metal ones that are pretty long compared to these other ones. So a little bit of a difference. See if you can. So we're just going to use these, but even then, see if we can show you on here. All right, here we are. So here's the spacer. Here's the fork tube. It's actually like, it's at the, basically right at the cap. So it won't have much of a preload when we put that on there. And you can get it pretty snug just by hand. That I think the torque is like 20 to 30 foot-pounds. So you have one complete. So now we're gonna put this on the bike, and that's where you can really torque it down. Again, it's not that much. So we're gonna put it back through the triple tree and see the difference from the other fork tube. See how that looks. And once you've done one, you're just gonna repeat all those same steps for the other one, and then you have your new fork tubes. So here is the +6 on your left. Dog, that is wild. It's like basically touching the ground. I think that might be what we're looking for versus the +8. But nevertheless, we have some fork caps coming that you're basically going to put on top of the fork cap, and then you put the fork cap on top of that, and then that is going to give you 2 inches. They sell 1 inch, 2 inch, I think a couple of 3 or 4, but we went with the 2 inch. Crazy. All right, so we also swapped the kickstand. We've tightened these up. Oh, we need to add the brake caliper. Almost fucked that up. That's actually not too bad. We could probably just secure that so it's just a little bit of a loop up here. So 51, you might be able to get away with the appropriate one. So now we have everything buttoned up. We're gonna go ahead and drop it to see how it looks. We don't have a front brake, which is always weird because I always want to secure the bike with the front brake, but there's nothing there. So we're just gonna drop it. Dude, that front wheel's already touching. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. Oh, that's not drastic, man. I thought it was gonna be crazier than that. Like the position of the bike, I thought it was gonna be a lot more of like easy rider. Oh God. Cockpit wise, it does feel a little taller. Like this is in my face. So I'll probably get rid of that. But we're gonna lose it. Whoa, buddy, chill. It wants to roll back with that height. Master cylinder? Doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look as wild as I was wanting it to. So in the next video, we're gonna be adding +2 fork caps, which is gonna give us a +8, which should give us what we're looking for.